You ready? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'd like to welcome our special guest tonight. This is Ibtihaj Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. This is my first time wearing a headset like this. What do you think? Do you like it? It feels a bit strange, but I think I'll get used to it.
So Ibtihaj is here with us tonight to share her newest book, The Boldest White, and she's going to start with a very special reading for you guys. Are you ready? Yes? Can you get a little bit louder? Are you guys ready?
So my book, The Boldest White, is actually a sequel to two books, The Proudest Blue and The Kindest Red. Have you guys heard of those books? Yeah? So some of you have heard of it, some of you haven't, but they are my favorite books. And why they're my favorite, when I was growing up, I didn't have the opportunity to read books that had characters who looked like me, characters that wore hijab, who had the same skin color as me, and I wanted to share stories of kids that were Muslim. I wanted to share stories that I could relate to, that you all could relate to. So I'm going to read a few pages of The Boldest White, and if you have the book, raise it up. Can I see it? Does everyone have the book? If you have the book, we're going to start from the beginning, and we'll read together. So when I turn the page, you turn the page, okay? The Boldest White, a story of hijab and community. What is it? You want to read? Or read together? Come. Guys, if you can hear me, clap your hands. Thank you. Okay, everybody, just one time, open your book. The Boldest White, a story of hijab and community. Summer, Friday, the best day of the week. When our family goes to Jummah together. We sit in rows and listen, and then stand to pray. I love it, being part of the crowd. Like everyone else, covered from head to toe. It feels right, I feel right. After, I go to fencing class. Coach Miss Dilly points at the uniforms, and we all change speedy quick. We're a sea of masks. I love it, being part of the crowd. Like everyone else, covered from head to toe. It feels right, I feel right. Coach yells, "Allez, Faiza," and I lunge, saber out. All eyes are on me, and a worry grows. Are they looking at me because I did something wrong? When people stare at me, I forget the rules. Saber first, then move forward. Coach reminds me, lead with your arm, not your feet. I step back. Did I do something wrong? On Sunday at the masjid, I sit between Mama and my sister Asiya. Sometimes I lean on Mama. Sometimes I lean on Asiya. We're waiting for the call to prayer. Then, after prayer, Asiya goes for her fencing lesson. When we drop Asiya off, Coach asks if I want to come in today too, for extra practice. He says, remember, there's a tournament coming up. Does he think I want to enter the tournament? Doesn't he know I'm not brave like Asiya? Instead, I think about Eid. The day before Eid, my best friend Sophie will come and help me pick out our Eid clothes, and that will be a lot more fun. I decide to come home with Mama. Once Asiya returns from fencing class, she shows me the moves she practiced, and I shadow her. As soon as she leaves my room, I practice alone. When no one is watching, I'm the best fencer in the world. I can beat anyone in any tournament. I can always lead with my arm and follow with my feet. Even when others are watching, I can do it. I can be the best. But it's hard to be my best when I have to stand alone to do it. On Friday at the masjid, the adhan calls us to pray. We stand together, rows and rows and rows. The imam steps forward to lead the way, and with Mama and Asiya, I follow. I love it, being part of the crowd. It feels right, I feel right. After prayer, I try to keep that warm feeling locked inside, but it escapes me. I feel like a balloon that's been poked. I feel myself shrinking. Mama and Asiya see my face when we get to fencing class. I have to tell them, what if I can't do it when people are watching? Mama says not to worry. She says bravery will come in time, like it did for Asiya. She says bravery grows in your mind, but its roots are in your heart. Water the roots for the right reasons, and bravery will grow, exactly when you need it to. I go to the class and listen and learn from Coach Mistilli, quietly. At home, I practice loudly, roaring when I finish a bout with my shadow. Asiya is at my bedroom door. Did I teach you that? I nod. You and Coach. Faiza, you have to enter the tournament. I shake my head. Bravery grows in your mind, but its roots are in your heart. My heart is not quite ready. So I'm going to stop there, leave you on a bit of a cliffhanger. Inshallah, when you guys get home, you have the opportunity to read the book with your parents and find out if Faiza finds the bravery that lives deep inside of her, and if she decides to enter the tournament or not. Okay, ask Mama.
Can we give Sister Ibtihaj a round of applause for reading? Yes, thank you. Okay. So just a quick announcement before we continue. We are going to have a little bit of a deeper discussion tonight with Sister Ibtihaj. So if parents would like to help escort your children downstairs, inshallah, there's activities prepped for them to hang out and relax before the book signing, inshallah. We'll give a couple minutes for that.
You ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first question for you is...
Sorry, assalamu alaikum. We're going to get started up here. So if we can have everyone keep their voices down. Thank you.
So one thing I really loved about this final installation was how emotional it was. And I'm curious to know how much of the emotional moments in this book are reflections of your actual life and growing up and doing all of the practicing and training that you had to do.
Yeah. So, sorry, I feel like either I'm whispering or I'm yelling. So I'm going to try to meet in the middle, inshallah.
I'll speak louder.
So I hope that this is not the final installation of my book. This is the third book of a series, but I would love to have a rainbow of books. Right now we're just on red, white, and blue, but inshallah more books in the future. I did want the books to mirror experiences that I've had growing up, but also ones that we can all learn from today. I think that there's a lot of lessons in either the proudest blue, the kindest red, and even in the boldest white that are applicable to the experiences that I myself have as an adult, but even that we see in children's day-to-day.
So one of those lessons that I saw in this book especially, and also in The Proudest Blue, was the advice from the mother to the girls, whether it was for leaving off the negative words that people have to say to you, or whether it's finding that strength from within. And I'm curious to know, is the mother character in the book based on your own mother, or that advice is for that character kind of based on the lessons that you had to learn, and you're giving that advice from yourself to the children?
I think that Mama's words can definitely remind you of your own mother, whether mine or a mother figure in your life. And her words are meant to be words of wisdom, and you see that carried throughout the series. In The Proudest Blue, you have, this storyline of bullying that Faiza and Asiya experience because Asiya begins to wear hijab for the first time. But it's Mama's words that come in throughout the book that remind Asiya and Faiza that the bully's words aren't, theirs to hold on to. And those words of wisdom, that's kind of been the theme throughout all of the books. And in The Boldest White, it's all about bravery. As an athlete, so much of my career has been about finding, that inner warrior that lives deep inside of you. There's a lot of challenges that exist as a hijabi, as an African American in a predominantly white sport, and even as a woman in saber fencing specifically. Like, a lot of people don't know, but the weapon that I fenced in the Olympics wasn't an Olympic event until 2004 for the first time. For a long time, it was thought that saber was too aggressive and that women would get hurt. So it's only been about 20 years that saber was even an event for women to exist in. So there's a lot of challenges that we as female athletes face in this space, but also as a woman of color and as the only hijabi, or maybe my sister as well, because we competed together, at these big events. So I think that there's a lot of different moments that you see throughout the book where you have to be reminded, especially in sport as a professional athlete, that bravery is there. You just have to constantly remind yourself that you are capable and that you're able and that you have everything already inside of you in order to be successful.
Thank you. So along those lines, I'm curious, could you share with us a little bit and deeper about particular struggles that you faced? And I know this book in particular is actually really beautiful, the way that it displayed her insecurity and her self-doubt in that process of getting ready for this big event, that it was her first time. And you yourself have gone through so many firsts in your life, and I'm curious to know if you could share with us, what some of your own insecurities were along the way and how you found that strength within yourself to keep pushing forward.
We've all done something for the first time, rollerblading or something where you just kind of feel uneasy. And for me, it was like fencing. It wasn't easy at first. I felt like I had 2 left feet when I first started. In fencing, we move in a linear motion. So your opponent's in front of you, and so you're literally chasing down your opponent or you're trying to get away from your opponent, but always in a straight line. And if your back foot can't cross in front of your right foot, just to make that movement all the time can be really awkward at first. But in time and with a lot of practice, fencing became a lot easier for me. And I think whether you're a fencer or, a football player, and in any sport, all things become easier, when you work hard and you dedicate yourself. And that's kind of how it was for me in fencing. I don't know if I've ever been this, I don't think I'm a savant when it comes to fencing by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always been the hardest working person in the room. I really value the opportunity that sport gives you to get better, and you have to be willing to fail in order to be an athlete. And I think that's why you have so many people quit sports, because they don't like to fail. But I know that sport has taught me so much about myself and the limits, that I have, and you just get to push yourself, and see what you're capable of. And so in sport, I went from being 200th, ranked in the world to world number 7, and that wasn't because, that was because I believed in myself, but I was also willing to work really hard, alhamdulillah.
So, how do you find that, how do you build that internal motivation? And so many of us in this room are parents, we have children, young and old, and, we have a lot of those moments where our children may join a sport. My own children are involved in sports, and even though they might love it, they have those hard days and those hard moments and the times where they just want to quit, they want to give it all up. And how do you how do you today, and everything that you're still doing outside of sports, push yourself through those hard moments and to kind of realize the end of what you're trying to achieve?
When it comes to children, I don't know if it's the right thing to allow them to quit. But at the same time, you have to realize when the interest isn't there. And our family, if the bill was paid, right, if my parents already put the money into the sport, you're doing it until the end. There were sports that I just was not interested in. I ran track and just didn't enjoy being hot outside. I didn't like it. I've tried tennis, but again, it was hot and I didn't love it. But with fencing, I felt really comfortable. And I know that that's because of the uniform. And track and field or volleyball or any of the different sports that I played growing up, my teammates always wore shorts and tank tops. And as a young hijabi, it can be really difficult to stand out, so strongly. And we all remember being young. You just kind of want to blend in. You don't want, to look like a highlighter in a room. And so, and I've always been like this. I don't like attention. And I feel like I was getting unwanted attention in those different sports because I had a long sleeve top underneath my team uniform, or I had sweatpants and I had on my hijab, especially when I played volleyball. And in fencing, I feel like I just kind of blended in with everyone else. And what set me apart from my teammates, even though we all kind of looked alike, there was a sea of white. We all had on white jackets, the long white pants that you see on the cover, and our face masks. What separated each of us was our ability. And I have always been a very, very competitive person. If I'm not the best, I don't really know if I'm enjoying myself. So I've always been, I would work really, really hard so that I could beat everyone at practice. Yeah.
It's a very high standard to hold yourself to,
Yeah.
having to be the best at everything. Again, I'm trying to, what advice would you have for us, right? Like, as parents raising our children who are in sports, or maybe it's not sports, maybe it's some other team, some other activity, to keep pushing them to go, to keep pushing them forward, and to help them figure these things out for themselves, because you were able to navigate all these different things that you liked or you didn't like or you didn't want to stand out. How do we help them to discover themselves the way that you were able to?
I don't have children, not a parent, so I am only going to tell you what I feel like worked for me, and it was just really doing things that interest me. I always found a love for sport, and when it came to fencing, it was a means to an end. I wanted to go to one of the top universities in the country. That was my plan from the time I was, I think, 12 years old, and I came from a working class family, and my dad was a cop and my mom was a teacher, and these top schools in the country were so expensive, so I had to figure out how I was going to pay for them. And for me, I felt like fencing was an opportunity for me to kind of get my foot in the door at one of these top schools, to separate myself from other people, and that was really what encouraged me, to really grind and I think have this vested interest in the sport of fencing. I don't know what the right answer is, but when it comes to what sport your child should participate in, but I do believe that all kids should play sports. I think that you set a really strong foundation when you force your kids to be active, because that's something they can carry with them throughout their lives. And I know that there's a lot of adults in the room who, some of us later in life become interested in our physical health when Allah forbid, we're tested with some type of physical ailment. We start to think about things that we eat or how we move our bodies later in life. And I think it's really important that we shift that mindset. There's a lot of information out there, whether it be through social media or just access to the internet, that we have, that we know we live healthier lives when we're active and when we're moving. And so it's a lot easier when you set that strong foundation in kids to force them to be active. So in our family, there were five kids, and we all had to play a sport. And my parents didn't tell us what sport to play. They let us pick. Our town, I'm from Maplewood, New Jersey. We grew up, there was like a rec book, and you could flip through the book and pick a sport. And so there's just so much out there that you can choose from, and I just think it's important that kids not only are active, but they learn how to interact with, their classmates and kids their age in a healthy way through sport.
So another theme that I really liked about this book, all three of them actually, was the focus on the family. I thought it's such a beautiful contrast to so much children's literature that's out there where the relationships between the families is strained or it's just negative. And your example in this book is just this beautiful, caring, loving family. And I have a feeling that came from your family, was inspired by your own. Could you talk to us a little bit about how your parents raised you with those values and how you carried that through with these books?
I think that I just value the idea of family. And as a kid who grew up in a predominantly white town, I think there was maybe one or two other Muslim families in our town and that I went to school with. I just really valued being around people who looked like me and had the same belief system. Things just felt easier and I felt safer when I was around family, or even like when we spent a lot of time at the masjid on the weekends. And so I wanted to kind of create and mimic those moments throughout the book. And I think that's why in the last book, The Boldest White, you have this thread of community and Asiyam Faiza finding community in faith at the masjid, or celebrating, a big holiday, and you also see Faiza find community in the sport of fencing.
So for you in your personal journey, as an Olympian, as an entrepreneur, as an activist now, you're very proud with your faith and your Islamic values. And what advice would you have for the young women who are coming up today and starting their journeys? How do they find that balance between trying to achieve what they want and possibly being the only one of their kind in their field and still holding on to those values and representing their faith the best that they can?
It's important that you let your work speak for yourself. I never, was screaming from the rooftops that I was Muslim or that I was different from other people, or, or articulating to others what I wanted, from sport. But I just, was really just in the gym and outworking everybody. I feel like that's what allowed me the ability to be successful, but also really trying to hold on to my faith. I feel like this life is just full of so many different tests, and when we think about what the constant is in our lives, it's always going to be our faith. When you have something good happen in your life, so many of us, remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in those moments, or at least we should. But when you have a test, we're always going back, to our faith to make dua, or even just try to protect ourselves in that moment. So when we're conscious of our faith and we lead with faith first, and I can only speak for myself, but in my life I feel like that's kind of kept me on a path that's been genuine and been really conscious of the world that I want to see.
And I think that's a really difficult thing to do when so many in society kind of look down on that practice of leading with faith first, and there's so many forces at work that are trying to pull us away from that faith. And I guess I'm kind of curious how you balance that, and how you held on in the face of others trying to pull you away from it, or possibly looking down on you in that process.
I think of it's the time that I grew up in. I'm a kid who grew up, during 9/11, where people were, dropping parts of their name to try to assimilate to what they thought other people wanted them to be. And as a very visible Muslim woman, I wear hijab, and I also live at the intersection of so many different identities. I'm also African American. I feel like I experience a lot of microaggressions in my day-to-day. So I found no value in trying to hide parts of my faith. There was no like immediate satisfaction I would get from that. And so I have always really stood firmly in who I am. And I think a lot of that comes from being bullied as a kid. When you're bullied, you either have two ways you can receive that. You can fold to the things that people say and you can allow it to affect you. Or you can say, actually, I don't care what you have to say. And it took me a long time to get to that. And I think that all of us experience that. Some of us at work, especially now in the day and age that we're existing in as Muslims, we are facing a lot of unique challenges. And it can be really difficult. But one thing that I talk about in my memoir, Proud, I don't know if they have that for sale here today, but one thing that I talk about in my memoir and that I experienced as an athlete was these daily affirmations. When I look at someone like Muhammad Ali and how strong he was in his faith, but also how confident he was, I always thought, how does someone, the greatest of all time, this boxer, how did he arrive at that peak, self-confidence? And I wanted that for myself because as an athlete, I really struggled sometimes, especially after I won my first world championship. For whatever reason, I felt like there was this immense amount of pressure I was carrying around to show up as world number one all the time. And so I think that mentally it began to mess with me. And how I overcame that hurdle was learning to adopt what I call my Muhammad Ali mantras. And that's literally telling myself, this is when I'm fencing, how strong I am, how fast I am, and how I'm the best person on the field or in the field that day. And it's not that you always necessarily need to believe that you're the best person there, but you are telling yourself over and over and over again, and eventually small bits of that start to seep in, and I feel like you believe it. And I learned that from the sports psychologist I was working with. You're literally trying to manifest the things that you want for yourself. So I would see myself hitting my opponent. I would see myself, being really strong and winning my matches. And trying to incorporate that manifestation and those affirmations in my life just really changed the way that I competed and how I showed up for myself. And I don't think that those are limited to sport, and that's in your day-to-day, trying to be the best version of yourself and not allowing that self-doubt and that harsh criticism that I know that we all have, especially in this day and age with social media where people are giving you very curated, perfect views of their lives, which we all know are not true. We just have to be a constant reminder that, we are enough as we are and as we are in that moment, and we don't need to set unhealthy, expectations for ourselves because we see what other people have or may not have.
That's very beautiful. Thank you, Ibtihaj. We are going to take a break for Salah, and when we reconvene, we'll take questions from the children and have the book signing afterwards, inshallah. Thank you.
And if you can, when your kids come back, inshallah, after prayer, if they can make sure that they have their book when they sit, that would be great. Thank you.